I'm a special education teacher at James John Elementary in a self-contained focus program for 3rd through 5th grade students with social and emotional disabilities. I'm here to share with you our experience this past year as the special education department and the district began closing the K-2 focus programs in attempts to mainstream these students. At the end of last year, our SPED building team all met with the Director of Special Education, and we were told that the K-2 focus program would remain in place for the 2014-15 school year. We were told that the paraprofessionals and critical one-on-one support staff would remain in place. The department was aware that the numbers of students placed in this program were low. However, they understood the high needs of these students, the projected incoming students, the high needs of our building, and the 3-5 focus classroom, so all staff would remain in place. We were told that as we move towards inclusion for students placed in more restrictive settings, staff could be utilized as the building determined to support these students. Unfortunately, 3 days before school started, we were told that 3 paraprofessionals would not be in place. No rationale was provided. We were left to scramble, causing a big setback that absolutely worked against the goals of inclusion for all students. 2 months later, the department did close the K-2 focus program and remove the teacher, again, with only 3 days for us to plan. This was incredibly disruptive to the students this teacher was serving, not only the focus program, but the other students with behavioral needs she was supporting as well. It was also disruptive to the general ed teachers supporting these students and the non-disabled students who also experienced this transition. The lack of support from the department limits progress towards inclusion for all students and has forced us to make difficult decisions. My team is routinely placed in untenable circumstances where we need to choose between the better of bad options regarding student and staff safety. We cannot progress with the current supports in place. When the district does respond, it is reacting to repeated disruptions and dangerous incidents as opposed to thoughtfully preventing safety concerns and planning for success by having appropriate supports in place. How are we to include students who are ready when the only staff available are consistently supporting students who desperately need one-on-one support to stay safe at school? This leaves no support for students who are ready to experience inclusion opportunities. My team would like nothing more than to see these students succeed in an inclusive, mainstream, general education environment. Yet we are struggling to meet the current needs of students on a consistent basis based on current supports. In order to close this gap and help these students succeed, we need direct involvement from district leadership. These students deserve more support, not less, as the district rolls out these massive changes in services.
This is my 3rd year as a Learning Center teacher and special education case manager at Roosevelt High School. Over the last 3 years, our team has fought to establish an inclusive push-in model and have seen special education students' passage rates increase by double-digit percentage points in core content classes. Our district's new Special Education Redesign compromises our success. It has decreased the already deficient support for our students, increased our workloads, and threatens to weaken the success of our accomplishments. This redesign is flawed. IDEA states that students with special needs should only be removed when the nature or severity of the disability of a child is such that the education in regular classes with the uses of supplementary aids and services cannot be achieved satisfactorily. Our students can access the least restrictive environments, but only when given access to the supports and services they need. This redesign had made our services less satisfactory. Currently, my building's 5 Learning Center teachers and 200 students share only one paraeducator who is often designated to tasks similar of a campus security agent. This has resulted in an increased disproportionality in the exclusionary discipline of students with special needs in our building. Our students need para support to access general education classes and have none. Also, students currently have no step-down process for transitioning into our building. They arrive and are thrust into a model they are not yet prepared for. At the beginning of this year, we had hasty meetings for 4 students who came to us from mental health facilities, focused behavior placements, and residential facilities. Only one of these students remains. These students needed more transition support and got none. The 3D identification process requires case managers to complete paperwork that solely increases our workloads. It has no follow-up, seeks information easily found in our information systems, and arrives too late to support students. We have had 9 students identified for the 3D process because of academic, attendance, and discipline concerns. Of these, 2 passed 7 of 8 of their classes at semester, and 5 were flagged after they left our building. One had 3 discipline infractions, nearly perfect attendance, and passed 7 of his 8 classes, while I have a list of nearly 30 students with similar or more significant attendance, behavior, and academic needs who have not been flagged. The 3D process could work, but only if it identifies students with the most significant needs and provides commensurate support in our buildings. Here's what we need to fix these issues. One-to-one para support for each Learning Center case manager. Transition teams that include students, families, district representatives, and members of the old and new placement staff. A 3D process that brings support to students. Designated special education coaches or department heads in each building. A district-wide discipline policy that involves student support teams in discipline decisions. Redesigning our services should not be done in a way that undermines or increases our workloads, diminishes the safety of our buildings, or decreases the supports and services for our students. We need a redesign that puts more professionals in our buildings, not more paperwork on our desks.
I come to you tonight to speak about concerns regarding the current special education redesign. Recently, you have listened to formal presentations from the Director and Assistant Director of Special Education, in which special education redesign was touted as an aspirational plan which would bring services to students instead of sending them to programs that some perceive as exclusionary, use data-driven decision-making, and build capacity using school resources. You have heard many slick titles and descriptions in this redesign plan, such as REACH 2020, 3D, and SWIFT. First and foremost is my concern about the recent closure of behavior-focused programs and loss of services associated with these programs, such as licensed teachers and paraprofessionals. The U.S. Department of Education outlines required continuum of placement in Section 300.115B1, which states, a continuum must include alternative placements such as regular classes, special schools, home instruction, and instruction in hospitals and institutions. In writing IEPs, site-based teams often have to dance around level of services, supports, and placement due to pressure from administration to not write paraprofessional support for students, despite site-based teams identifying the need for paraprofessional support. My second concern is regarding the process and procedure which triggers services and supports for students. With a recent special education redesign in Portland Public, students are often placed in general education classrooms with limited or no supports to see if they can be successful. Of course, they often fail academically or behaviorally. An alarming trend I am witnessing is that frustrated and concerned teachers are asking special education teams if students need to be medicated because of unmet mental health and behavioral needs. Finally, I speak to my concern about how special education services are allocated to students. The recent special education redesign has undermined and taken away site-based decision even more than before in favor of newly formed non-site-based district teams using the 3D approach in which attendance and behavioral data in synergy is analyzed. In many schools, attendance and behavior incidents are not documented in synergy with fidelity, rendering the 3D method of analyzing unreliable. In closing, I will ask that the superintendent and the board please consider the negative impacts of special education redesign that have been presented. Does the special education redesign serve to meet our students' needs for intensive wraparound safety, mental health, and learning needs, or are our decisions being made based on catchphrases and buzzwords instead of actual efficacy?
Thank you very much.